Let me ask you something. Are you in your 40s, 50s, or 60s? And maybe you're wondering, is this it? Maybe you're juggling aging parents, adult kids. You're a Gen Xer still trying to figure out the next chapter in your life it's in. Is this a midlife meltdown? Is it a moment of truth? Today, I'm going to be joined by my good friend Louise Bedford, and we're going to explore how Gen Xers can turn this midlife stage of their life into a period that's the launch pad for purpose, for profits, and for powerful decisions. Now, while we're going to be talking about why Gen Xers are feeling financially vulnerable at the moment, I believe this conversation is going to be very valuable for most of our listeners, whether you're a property investor, a trader, a business person, or just thinking about getting your finances under control. Because even if you're not Gen X yet, the messages we're going to give are going to be relevant. And even if you're a little bit older than Gen X, I'm sure that my conversation with Louise will give you some hints, because we're going to explain how the best years of your life are most likely ahead and how to align your wealth building efforts with meaning. So whether you're feeling a little stuck, ready for an intervention, stick with us. You might discover that the second half of your life is where the real magic happens.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Hi, Louise. Always fun having these simulcasts, the two podcasts for your audience and mine, because even though I'm in the area of property and you're in share trading, I'm involved in shares and you're involved in property. I guess investors and entrepreneurs are multifactorial, aren't they?
We really are. And my best share traders actually have a property background. So I think it's great to be able to have income from more than just one source and develop our assets where we can.
Diversification. I agree with that. That makes sense, Louise.
Yeah. Now, look, I wanted to talk with you about the forgotten middle child between the boomers and between the millennials. There is Gen X. Now, Gen X, whether it is something that you're actually in, whether you were actually born between 1964 and 1981, regardless, you're still going to know people in that time frame. A lot of the problems this generation are facing are also shared by the boomers and by the millennials as well. But these Gen Xers are moving into midlife in huge numbers right now. What are the financial mistakes that you're seeing with this group? And what sort of things are they doing wrong? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, Gen X are often referred to as the sandwich generation because they're simultaneously caring for aging parents and their own children on the other side. And sometimes this dual responsibility can create significant emotional, financial, logistic challenges for Gen Xers. So you're right, they're now in their 40s and 50s, and some of them are having a bit of a rough run. Having said that, most of our significant CEOs and politicians are Gen X, so it's an important generation. But over the last while, some were hit by the global financial crisis as they were starting to build their wealth, and others now are facing higher cost of living. They bought a big house, they got extensive mortgages, and many of them still have financially dependent kids. And as I said, some are even now having to help their parents who probably didn't look after their finances well. So what's the biggest mistake? A long-winded answer to your question. I think they underestimate how much they're going to need in retirement and leaving investing for themselves too late. Most people hope to plan to retire somewhere in their 60s, Louise. And the way modern health now is that they're going to probably live another 30 years. We see that superannuation balances are just not going to see them through. The pension, well, who knows if the government's ever going to give us one, and that doesn't look after you very well. So I think they've probably been too focused on paying down the debt on their home, getting on with life, without actually building an asset base on the side to see them through. And I think others who are starting to think about that at the moment, Louise, are a bit confused. There's all these mixed messages in the media, leading some people to what we call paralysis by analysis. The headlines are talking about interest rate problems, housing bubbles, affordability issues, geopolitical problems. Sometimes it's just easier for them to do nothing. They see that's not taking a risk, but in my mind, doing nothing is the biggest risk of all, Louise.
I agree. I think people do leave it too late. We're having children later. Our parents are dying later. We're living longer. There's all these types of pressures that we need to absorb, but at the same time, think a long way ahead. You know, Michael, I heard the other day that somebody who's addicted, there's a study based on how far can they project themselves into the future. And the
Interesting.
yeah, it is, isn't it? They only have 9 days. If they have a serious addiction, they can't see past
Yep.
9 days.
Yeah.
Now, I think our addiction of the current world is that we're busy. We're busy, 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 and we don't stop to think. And maybe that's why, because of that addiction, we're having trouble casting our eyes forward and seeing further into the future.
That's an interesting way of thinking about things because we've spoken in our podcasts before, and I know in your mentor program, we discussed the concept of a game of investing, whether it's shares, trading, property is really a game of psychology. So when the media just recently asked me a couple of weeks ago, what's the biggest difference between the successful property investors you've dealt with and the average person? And it's not their knowledge, it's not their income or their profession. It's the way they think, isn't it, Louise? Their mindset. And I know you've often said that trading is a psychological game as much as it is a technical one. How do you see this relating mindset shifts in midlife?
Yeah, trading has a way of just holding up a mirror to all of your flaws. And in midlife, there's nothing more important than actually being authentic. We often have that idea that eventually we'll grow into our own skin. And midlife is often how people do respond to that. They work out who they are and what they want and who they want to be. So I think we value internal satisfaction in this midlife process. And that satisfaction can come from a variety of different arenas. It can come from your career, from the kids, from being a service person. What services can I provide for my aging parents, for my perhaps sick children, sick friends? But also, I do think it does make us confront uncomfortable truths at this age. Are we living on autopilot? Are we just going through life in a bit of a fog because we are so busy and not really valuing the things that count to us? It's interesting because trading often gets people to pause and reflect on where they've come from. It's almost like they've got a moment of silence and they go, my gosh, what the living hell have I been doing? So I think that's why trading can be where people hit that wall and then they realize that trading can help them excel and that it can lead them to the things that they really want. Because I have heard with you as well, Michael, we talk quite a bit about strategy, and you've said that buying a property isn't a strategy. I'd love you to unpack that. What do you think a proper midlife wealth strategy looks like?
Well, I think a lot of people recognize that they've got to do something separate from just saving. You can't save your way to wealth or hoping the government will look after you or hoping your superannuation will work. So there's over 2 million Australians who buy an investment property or currently own investment properties. Interestingly, the statistics show that about 50% of people who buy an investment property sell up in the first 5 years. And of those who stay in the game, 92% never get past their first or second investment property. So they don't really get the financial independence they're looking for because they haven't built themselves a big enough asset base. Because they think looking on realestate.com or searching, going to open for inspections is researching. No, it's not. Or they think property investment, buying a property is a strategy. To me, property investment's a process, and the property you eventually buy should be the physical manifestation of a whole lot of decisions you make and make in the right order. And it all starts by having a strategy, a plan. And it depends what your timeframes are, it depends what goals you want to achieve. It really depends upon where you are in your journey, what your risk profile is. So at Metropole, we always start by putting a strategy together, and the property we eventually buy is the implementation of that strategy. In fact, we use powerful software to make that work. And the strategy involves multiple factors: an asset accumulation strategy, a cash flow strategy to be able to see you through the ups and downs, asset protection and a tax strategy, paying down debt strategy, and then eventually living off property strategy. Boy, I've used that word strategy quite a bit, but I think midlifers that we're talking about in our chat today really need two businesses. They need the first business being their job, their profession, their business, if they've got one, which is a cash flow business, bringing them cash flow in, their profession, whatever, and then building a second business, which is an asset growth business of a property portfolio. Now, anyone who says property only, or shares only, I'd say run away very quickly, because they probably have a vested interest. So while I am talking about property, I think we've already said a couple of times today that we both recognize the importance of having a mixture of both. But what we're talking about with a strategy is knowing what the end game is and then doing what's necessary to get there, Louise. But just as importantly, avoiding the mistakes and errors. So buying an investment isn't a strategy, but also be careful whose opinions and strategies you listen to. Because at the moment in the property space, there's lots of new young bucks who haven't been around long, who are using AI to give very generic answers. They don't have the depth or the perspective to get to get through the clutter of the averageness.
Yeah, it is interesting. There was a study about AI in the financial, legal, and health fields about the accuracy of the suggestions that AI makes, and it failed dismally. Even simple things such as, how do I save for my children's education? Things like this, which you would think it would have come up with an answer, it really gave answers that were not only generic, but also incorrect. So I think we do have to be careful, and we have to have somebody who has an understanding about our background and can act as a mentor to us, taking into account our individual circumstances. So I know with members of my mentor program, I'm very careful with this because it's so important that they have strategies that fit them, rather than having a generic strategy that anybody can apply and it might not actually work for the individual.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because in the property space, they're all getting the data from the same spot: CoreLogic, or now called Cortality, Australian Bureau of Statistics, Reserve Bank, or PropTrack. And there's a whole wave of new property experts, let's call them in air quotes for those who are actually listening and not watching. And they're all getting the same ideas and information and herding their clients into the same small regional towns, the next hotspots. And they're creating a little mini boom when they're herding everybody into these small markets. And then all of a sudden the property values go up above the fundamentals, and the locals are wondering what's going on. So AI in some ways is creating its own boom, which is going to fall over when the investors chase the next hotspot. Is there anything similar with AI pointing people in the direction of particular shares or particular trades without the fundamentals of understanding? See, in property, you need more than just the information. It's part science and part art. And I guess that's the same as you were already starting to say in trading. So the science is the data, but the art is understanding when you're speaking to a selling agent or the vendor, what are they doing? When are they hesitating? When you go to an auction, to see what people's emotions are, to understand the people at the other side of the transaction. How does that relate to the share market?
Yeah, so in the markets, I mean, really, I can teach anybody how to trade in 6 weeks. It is something that can be done over a compressed time frame. But you know what can't be done over a compressed time frame is you need long-term support in order to not only make sure your system is accurate, but also that your psychology is accurate, and that the maintenance part is something that you can fulfill. So that is a longer term process. Learning the skills is only part of what you're dealing with here. It's that support that you need as you go along, and you step on that landmine and realize, I better not do that again. And there are aspects to that that you need to have somebody outside the jam jar to be able to read the label. Shining a light into a trader's blind spot is what I absolutely love to do. So even though the initial skills can be taught in 6 weeks, that lifetime of being able to have insight and knowledge coming in from a mentor is something that I feel very strongly about.
Now, we're speaking in particular today about Gen Xers, but I know, or I hope our audience is a wide range of people. But I've seen people in their 40s, 50s, 60s come along and say, it's too late. All the good deals in property are taken. I don't have the time frame. I don't know it anymore. What about in the share trading world? Have you seen people in their mid-years pivot, change, thrive? How do they cope?
Yes, it's a difficult time as well because I think the tendency is for people to get stuck in fear or inertia where they feel stuck and they can't move on. So the difference between what makes people excel in the markets during this time and what makes people just meander and dither is structure and belief. You need the structure in order to follow a trading plan. You can pick up a free trading plan template from my website, tradinggame.com.au, because I feel very strongly about giving people that trading plan structure. Structure is one thing, and belief is the next. So you must know within your gut that you can do more, can be more, that you deserve more, that you deserve the things that you have got in your heart. And that is something that I think sometimes people would rather just flick on Netflix and not think about that, because that type of level can be painful. You do feel, what if I never achieve it? Or maybe you have to confront that I need this skill set to be developed for me to be able to achieve that. It can identify gaps in our psychology during this time where we're thinking, I always thought that I could do all of these things if I just had enough time, and now it looks like I might be running out of time. So it can be quite a pointy decision here for people to make that decision to take action compared to do nothing. And I do urge people to take action. Take that step. Look at where you are actually right now. See exactly what is required for you to get from where you are now to what you want, and seek out people to help. And that is what I think makes the difference between the people who get stuck in their 40s, 50s, 60s compared to the ones who reinvent themselves and just go gangbusters. So I've seen it. I've got a gentleman who I'm training at the moment. He's just lovely. Rod, his name is. He's 81 and he's just so into it. He got stuck at certain parts of my course. I helped him through it, and he's persistent and determined, and he's just gone on to such wonderful, not only knowledge about the markets, but results as well, because it's so nice to be able to implement and know that the results are going to be there also. So I do think we underestimate what we can achieve in our mid years, and that is a travesty. What do you think, Michael?
Well, I'm sure that many people think it, as we started to say, it's a bit too late. But the answer is I've seen people in their 50s and 60s. It's harder with property where it takes a longer time to build a substantial asset base. So the thing is, you can't afford to get it wrong. And that's why you need A, the correct strategy, B, to develop the mindset that you're in control. You're the pilot of your life, not the passenger. So you're going to take action, as you say, and then get a good team around you. So I find with the abundance of information at the moment, a lot of people think they can get all that they need from the internet, while they get their information for free from the internet. The most successful investors I've found are happy to pay for their advice, for their advisors who are independent and unbiased, and they're part of a mastermind group as well, and help have other people around them to give them support. So I'd agree with that, Louise.
Because I think a lot of Gen Xers are feeling the squeeze. They're dealing with aging parents. They're still looking after their kids. They're still paying off their house. They're getting a little bit fog oriented according to their own future. What does my own future reveal? So, how does one balance a property portfolio along these financial planning decisions? Because I think it can be quite a difficult balancing act.
Yes, that's why they call them a sandwich generation, isn't it, Louise? They're stuck in the middle there in some ways. So I think it's important to actually take the long-term view. You may have to do the hard things now to have an easier life later. If you do the easy things now, you're probably going to end up with a harder life later financially. And it may sound selfish, but look after yourself to secure your future. You know, the old story about putting the oxygen mask on first, because hopefully you're still going to be around for another 40 years or so, but probably not working for maybe another 10, 15, sometimes that 20 years. And then you've got those other years to support yourself. So you need to get a financial education. And then in property, there are a number of phases. The first stage is to educate yourself. Then there's the asset growth stage, and that takes 15 to 20 years, a couple of good property cycles of owning the right assets. Many property investors waste the first 5, 10 years by buying the wrong assets, but looking for hotspots, chasing cash flow. If you can avoid that and get a good strategy, and then make sure that you can buy yourself time, not just properties, by having financial buffers, what we call a bit of an emergency fund to protect yourself. So you can protect yourself by owning the best quality assets, having good finance structures. And I think a lot of Gen Xers are already now starting to think about intergenerational wealth. If I start building this, I hope not just to eat it up and leave my kids nothing, but leave something for the future. So also get the right tax advice with regard to ownership structures. Look, we know the world's going to change. Between now and when the Gen Xers retire, Louise, there's going to be multiple governments. There may be another upturn and another downturn. We're probably going to have another recession at some time. We don't know what the banks are going to do in 10, 20 years' time when they retire. We don't know if they're going to have access to the super fund, or they're going to have to wait later. Buy the right best assets you can that are going to see you through these challenging times in the most flexible structures. And I think one of the other things they should start thinking about sooner rather than later is estate planning. Many people don't think about wills and how to pass on to future generations until it's too late. I've unfortunately seen a few friends in this sort of age group, acquaintances, colleagues who have had some serious health issues. Some are not even around at the moment, and they haven't thought about their estate planning early enough.
Mm. Yeah, so true. It is such an area that people should not leave until they think they need it, because you don't know when the jig is up.
That's right. Again, plan to become the person you plan to become. We keep coming back with that word planning in some ways, but otherwise you'll just be sitting here in another couple of years listening to more podcasts and thinking, gee, I should have done that. I mean, there's always reasons not to. There's always uncertainty. Do not allow uncertainty to be your excuse not to do anything. Look at all the uncertainty. What was it, 5 years ago when COVID started? But anyone who bought a property 5 years ago, even the worst property in the worst location, has done very well. 2 years ago, when interest rates started to go up, uncertainty stopped people. I go back to 20 years ago with uncertainty, the global financial crisis, other times. So really, I guess the theme keeps coming around a couple of times, is actually take action, do something. Hopefully that's the message our listeners and our viewers are going to get, and we're going to encourage them to do something. That'll be a great result. Now, Louise, we've known each other for a long time. And over the time, you've talked about individuation, Jung's idea of shedding the mask you've worn most of your lives. Again, we both like the idea of the psychology behind investment and trading and finance. So what does this look like when you're talking about this individuation?
Yeah, so these are two times that individuation can occur in your life in general terms. Now, for those of you that don't know Carl Jung, he is the psychedelic poster child of one of Freud's disciples. So who knows, did he do magic mushrooms? Very, very possible. So I was very much into Carl Jung when I was studying my 4 years of psychology at uni. He is an awesome individual, and he definitely plays on the idea of the unconscious mind. Now, individuation is what I'm trying to do with my children currently. So I have, as you know, Michael, a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old, and my
I
role.
remember when they were little kids,
I know.
Louise. Remember playing around here that around Christmas time, and I showed them some magic tricks and they were excited. Now they're adults.
They really are. And as they become adults, that individuation process needs to occur. They need to separate out from me. So my role has changed from caregiver to, I think this is my role now, cheerleader. So I'm cheerleading them. They have a specific direction they want to go in life. And so now my role isn't to say, have you got your lunch? Have you filled your car with petrol? Because that is very micromanagey for a young adult. My role
Yes.
is to say, I love that direction you're going. Now tell me more about it. Tell me more, so that they can work out their own problems and individuate, separate, but become their own individual entity away from me. Now, I love this process. That is something that some parents don't realize. For a start, has your role changed? And secondly, some children find that a difficult process. That
Mm.
can be an extraction process from the safety and the consistency of the routine that they've had from childhood. Now, let's compare that type of individuation to what happens with midlife. Midlife, often when we hit our is or is a safety officer in our brain sparks up and says, my goodness, if you don't make some changes, you are going to die very soon, and you're going to die lonely and broke. Now, that safety officer often springs into mind at about 3 a.m. If you've had any bout of insomnia where you've been sitting up worrying, has it been to do with bills? Has it been to do with you're worried about your retirement? Is it something to do that you're concerned about your children's future? All of these things can pop up in our mind, and that's our safety officers saying, hey, pay attention, be alert, become aware of where you're heading, because if you continue down this path, you are going to get more of what you've got, and it's going to be worse. So I think we need to listen to that safety officer and woe betide anybody who tries to squash that safety officer down and silence that safety officer, because they are out for our own good. So this process of individuation is where traders and investors need to think, is where I'm heading in life going to actually be fulfilling? What was my previous role and what is my new role in this part of my life? Who should we be compared to who we actually are? And trying to find ways to bridge that gap is becoming more and more important at this age, because our friends do die. I've had friends who I thought were going to be fine, and they are no longer with us. These
Mm.
things ring through in your brain. You hear the news, you hear, oh, Trump tariff, you hear these disasters occurring around the world, and it all gets into your psyche. And if you silence your safety officer prematurely, you will not learn the lessons that that safety officer is trying to tell you. So I do think that traders and investors who have their choices aligned with their values, if they can say, okay, my top values are this, then my choices in my life represent these things, so that my actions are aligned with my values. They are the ones who are using their safety officer to the best degree, and they're the ones who are going to be the happiest, the healthiest, the richest people on the planet.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, Michael, at some point after that person's safety officer has finally been listened to, often people realize that they want more than just a big net worth. A lot of your clients must have this in common. What do you think your most successful clients have where they want to achieve more? They want to achieve past financial success. What do you think those fulfilled clients have as traits?
That's a really interesting word, Louise, fulfilled, because a lot of people just keep chasing and wanting more. And to be fair, I was that way too. It took me a long time to learn enough is enough when I've achieved enough. And that came from my background of poverty and a difficult childhood. And we see this when we get together with people at Wealth Retreat, already very successful property investors, business people, entrepreneurs, traders, and they're keeping chasing. So I think the big change for me was I actually wasn't doing it to keep proving myself to myself or to others, and I wasn't chasing it for more money. I guess the fulfilled people, different from successful, recognize that money is a tool. It's not just an aim. It's not the destination. And these fulfilled clients use money to buy themselves back time, to have time in fact, this afternoon, shortly after we finished our recording today, is my day that I pick up 3 of my grandkids from school. Tomorrow I see the other grandkids there. That's fixed in my diary, Pam, and I've got 2 holidays booked, 2 cruises still in the next 3 months to do. The money's allowing me to have time to focus on relationships, to pursue my passions. I've taken up my old childhood hobby of magic, to buy back time to enjoy things. So it also has allowed us to give back to the community and to give to charity. I believe that's an important thing as well. So I think that money on its own doesn't create wealth. Money's a multiplier. You need money plus your health. We've said that 3 or 4 times already today, that if you haven't got your health, what's the use of all this? Money plus somebody to love and somebody to love you. Money plus the ability to keep learning, to keep growing, to contribute, spirituality. So I think those most fulfilled clients are ones who've recognized that it's not really about the money at all, Louise.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's so much more to be had. I've got a goal at the moment, Michael. I think you might remember that my goal was to get down to do the splits before I turned 50, which I did. I did the kind of the leg forward, leg backward type of splits, but I've never been able to do the other type of splits. So my goal is before I hit 60 is to be able to do the other type of splits. Now, this
Wow.
may not mean that much to anyone else outside my own realm. However, I think for me to have a little health goal like that is so exciting and it does give
Yeah.
me a pep. So, what are the areas in your life that you can set little mini goals that they may not mean that much to other people, but they mean a lot to you? Because when you
Yes.
accomplish them, you can feel more fulfilled. You can feel like, hey, I've done that, so maybe I can do this. I like for my children to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. And their 2 parents have them too. So these big, hairy, audacious goals are something that we're working on outside of our usual line of study or making money. And I think that that is a very healthy way to go.
Interesting. Now, I was just imagining the split sideways. I think maybe we'll just leave it there at the moment because I still have difficulty getting up from doing my exercises on the floor in the mornings nowadays. There'll be people listening to this, Gen Xers and others. So this is just as relevant for you wherever you are in your life journey. But the people who are the Gen Xers in particular, the sandwich generation who've got so much going on, who are feeling emotionally exhausted, some are feeling financially behind. Gee, I should have started something. How do they start? Where do they start to rebuild discipline and get direction in their financial lives? Let's give them some guidelines, Louise.
Yes. Well, firstly, I think disregard anybody or any little voice telling you that it is too late because it is not too late. Start with something small, maybe 1 hour a day of focused learning, something where you can commit to yourself, give yourself a handshake agreement that I will fulfill this particular task and get it done. Don't let yourself get off lightly. Even set an alarm on your phone using the Pomodoro method. If you think it's going to take you, say, an hour and a half, set the alarm for 1 hour. So try to squash as much productivity into that hour as you can. And when the
Now,
alarm
I know
goes
the
off,
Pomodoro method, but
yeah,
there'll be people listening to this who don't. Could you just please explain that, Louise?
sure. So this is where we put ourselves under time pressure. We have one focus, one goal, and we make sure that we get that accomplished in an abbreviated period of time. So we're not talking, in 2 weeks I will have. We're talking more in the next 20 minutes I will. In the next hour and a half I will. And that way, by setting an alarm, it allows you to just focus for that period of time. It gets the attention of your reticular activating system so that you can focus in and only perceive what is in front of you as a goal. Unfortunately, we've trained ourselves to be completely distracted. We look at our phones, we hear a little beep, a notification, and our concentration is broken. And we know it takes 20 minutes to get back into our flow state when it is interrupted. We cannot afford to have that happen. So by setting that alarm and making sure there are no notifications on your phone, the phone is actually off or in airplane mode, you are just having complete deep work focus, the way Cal Newport in his book Deep Work discussed. So that is one of the aspects. But another thing is to put the right systems in place. So teach yourself that you can have that little goal achievement. Make sure then you have systems where these goals can build on each other like Lego blocks and create that Taj Mahal, that masterpiece. So making sure that you've got that structure and the system in place, I think is very important. And the third point is stop comparing your chapter 5 to somebody else's chapter 20. If they are further down the path than you, just go, that's okay for them. That's fine. But where am I right now? What tiny little improvement have I created in my life? What 1% improvement can I make right now? Focus on your numbers, your path, your goals. Especially in midlife, we do not have time to waste. We cannot adopt somebody else's mantra of what success is. What is success to you? How does it appeal to you? Because that is the thing that is going to energize you. It's going to keep you young. It's going to keep you fighting when things are seeming to be difficult. And I think that give up tendency, we can't afford to have that. We have to persist through past the things that are hard, and we have to start small so that we can convince ourselves that we can move forward. Your thoughts?
No, I agree with that. It's actually not too late. I think some people here are going to think maybe it's too late. Now, if you're in your 60s or 70s, maybe getting into property may be a bit late because finance is the issue. But as you were talking, I was thinking of a friend of mine, David, who's actually taken up trading in his late 70s. He's because he had some money, but not enough to get into property, and that's given him something to think about and excite every day. But also help make him some money, and so he's getting a lot of satisfaction from that. So I think a message I'd like to give to most people today is, in general, it's not too late to start, but you've got to be smart. You've got to have a clear picture of where you are. Become financially literate if you're not already by learning, and there's so many great ways of doing that now with podcasts, with the internet, and get somebody to help tailor a strategy for you to help you move forward. Somebody who's already achieved what you want to achieve. Be careful who you get as a mentor, and then start building an asset base. That's the message I'd like to give, that if you have an asset base rather than looking for cash flow in the short term, the asset base will give you the opportunity in the future to get the cash flow you require. Asset base first and then cash flow. So to finish off, Louise, is there one mindset shift that you wish every midlifer could make, whether they're in property, whether they're in trading, or just trying to figure out what the next chapter of their life is?
I think this chapter is about meaning and mastery. So you have, through your lived experience, so much to bring to the table here. We've shown with the studies that we've done into our own group of traders that sure, the younger people pick up these skills more quickly, but the more mature traders actually have those skills stick, and they go on to achieve greatness and have longevity with their results, because they know that that meaning that they can derive, that learning, that pushing forward with knowledge, those mastery goals are so important, and they're so much more important than the quick flash in the pan win. We're talking about permanent wealth, wealth just not for your bank account, wealth for every part of your life. That mastery aspect can really come into play as we approach or move through middle age. And the other thing to think about is I think we need to replace perfectionism with progress. Now, this is something when I look at my oldest member of my mentor program, he was 98 when he passed. He was a full-time trader for the last 12 years of his life. He got off the pension. He actually traded his own money for the last 12 years. So don't cap your potential. Don't listen to that narrative and believe that you don't have more to give, because you do. You are valued. The elders in the tribe were the revered members because they knew where the
Yes.
water holes were. They'd seen the droughts and they'd helped the tribe survive because they'd seen how it all came together in the past. Just know that your lived experience is going to help you. And when I'm helping my traders, I say to them that I'm looking for a system that doesn't take over your entire life. The idea is that you put your trading on autopilot so that you can retire early and focus on your goals, the things that really count. Like the time with your grandchildren, Michael, like the ability to share those experiences with your own children. Those experiences we know from happiness studies count more than actual money in the bank. But in order to have lovely experiences, often we do need that money in order to be able to have those experiences that can mean so much. So, in summary, because we are drawing to a close with this interview, I have loved being on your show, Michael. It is fantastic. I love our friendship. And if people want to find out more about me and to have a look at my Talking Trading podcast, then definitely look up Talking Trading wherever you find your podcasts. But also come to visit me at tradinggame.com. I've created a free 5-part video course called Trading Made Simple. This is your first step to moving towards understanding the markets and working out exactly how you can trade to supplement the property portfolio that you're developing with Michael. So tradinggame.com.au, and also with that pack, you're going to get my trading plan template. Now, I love that quote from Mary Oliver. What is your plan for your wild and precious life? Such a beautiful quote, and I think a lot of us know
Yeah.
that.
So
What?
for those of your audience who are listening
Yeah.
to me now for the first time, the Michael Yardney podcast, but I also have one with Simon Kirstenmacher, a joint friend, one of Australia's leading demographers, called Demographics Decoded, where we unveil the demographic trends that are going to affect our future. So that's a great podcast for anyone interested in business and entrepreneurship, in trading demographics decoded. I'll leave a link to all of these in the show notes for my show, and I'm sure you're going to as well. And my daily property newsletter, propertyupdate.com.au. Now, Louise, that was a powerful conversation, and I hope that those people listening recognise that their past shouldn't define their future. We've all made mistakes, things we'd regret, things we'd do differently. Don't beat yourself up about past decisions or not achieving by midlife what you're hoping to. Now it's time for you to step into becoming the person you plan to become. So whether you're looking to secure your finances, find a new meaning, reinvent yourself, the second half of your life should actually be even more fulfilling, the best chapter. So I hope Louise and I got the message across to you to start today. Take one step at a time. Don't be afraid to reach out for a professional. So Louise, thanks for joining us and sharing your wisdom.
Thanks so much, Michael. I love catching up with you.
Regular viewers or listeners to this podcast know that I have a property trivia question each show to give you, my listeners and viewers, an opportunity to win a hard copy of one of my best-selling books, Michael Yardney's Guide to Investing. Now go to propertytrivia.com.au. I'll leave a link in the show notes and enter your answer. I'm going to ask a question in a moment, and each week 3 correct answers win a hard copy of one of my books. But don't worry if you've been listening to a slightly older episode, that your entry is still going to count. And I've actually updated the report that everybody gets when they leave an answer. So there's a new report for you waiting. Just leave us your answer. The question this week is, what percentage of Australians own an investment property? Now, I'm going to give you one of the 3 choices. Is it around 10%, around 20%, or around 30%? What percentage of Australians own an investment property? 10%, 20%, or 30%? Leave your answer at propertytrivia.com.au. Before I get on to my mindset message, I want to point out that I'm finding something that I haven't seen in a long time. It's not often that all the property market commentators and economists agree on something, but currently they all seem to believe that the next year or 2 in property are going to be really great years for residential real estate, with higher prices month after month. Now, while I don't disagree, the fact that they're all in alignment when in general and forecasters have a terrible track record gives me reason to worry about their predictions. But in my mind, the answer is simple. Property markets are going to perform soundly moving forward. It's going to be a period of further falling interest rates. It's going to be a period of more confidence returning in the markets. But I see the markets are going to be fragmented. And in my mind, it's likely that only around 4% of all properties coming onto the market would be what I call investment grade. I think investors should seek opportunities in undervalued markets with long-term growth potential rather than frenzied hotspots such as some of the regional markets, regional Queensland and the hotspots of Perth and Adelaide that have had a really long run so far. I want to make another prediction though myself. Many of those who buy an investment property are going to sell up in the next 5 years. Probably half of those who do so if history repeats itself. And some of those who stay in the game are likely to find their property is going to underperform the averages. Again, if history repeats itself. So how do you beat these odds? You make the right decisions by getting the right advice. Successful property investors understand that getting independent strategic advice is an investment, not a cost. And if you want to outperform the markets over the next year or two, whether it's buying your home or an investment, have a chat with the team at Metropole, have a complimentary wealth discovery chat with one of our wealth strategists and explore your options. We've got no properties for sale, there's no obligation, and we're much more than just another buyer's agent. We'll help you safely outperform the markets by giving you strategic property and wealth advice. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Go to metropole.com.au. We've got all the data, but more importantly, we've got the perspective to back up our recommendations. metropole.com.au.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset message today, I'd like to talk about the perfection trap and how it could be holding you back from investing. Look, have you ever caught yourself saying, I just need a little bit more time to get it right? Maybe you've been researching property for months, suburbs, locations. Maybe you've been watching auction results, downloading all those property reports, waiting for the perfect time to buy. And yet you're still on the sidelines. Perfectionism doesn't just show up in our creative pursuits. It shows up in our money habits, in our business plans, and especially in property investing. The truth is, waiting for the perfect investment, the perfect interest rate stage, the perfect market conditions, it's often just fear in disguise. It's the ego wanting to be right, the need for control dressed up as being thorough. But here's the reality. No property is perfect. No market is flawless. No deal is without some risk. If Carl Benz had waited to invent the perfect car, or Henry Ford had sat around perfecting his first prototype, the automotive revolution probably wouldn't have even started. Their creations, they were clunky. But remember those pictures, they were odd looking. They were imperfect. But they were revolutionary because they got out there and they evolved. And it's the same with your property journey. You don't need to have the perfect investment. You need a sound strategy. You need the right guidance. You need the courage to take the first step. Perfection is subjective, but progress, now that's measurable. The first investment might not be your dream property, but get a foothold, get a foundation, get a move forward. So if you're stuck in analysis paralysis, waiting, refining or tweaking a plan, I guess my message today is get out there, take motion, take action, because messy action beats perfect hesitation every time. Thank you for spending the last little while with me. I hope you got some benefit from this show. But before you move on to the next podcast you're going to listen to, let me remind you I have another show that I produce once a week with leading demographer Simon Kirstenmacher. We call that Demographics Decoded, where Simon and I unveil the trends that are going to shape your future. In my mind, this is a must-listen-to podcast for anyone interested in property investment, but also for business people and entrepreneurs. So if you don't currently subscribe to Demographics Decoded, just please stop for a second and subscribe on your podcast app where you're listening to this, or on YouTube. And of course, if you don't subscribe to this show, the Michael Yardney Podcast, why not click the link that says follow or subscribe wherever you're listening right now. So twice a week, you're going to get benefit from my guests and me. And I'd like to ask you a little favour, please. If you did enjoy today's show and you know somebody who would also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney Podcast and Demographics Decoded. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there are 3 little buttons at the top of the player. Or just tell them about it. Just have a chat with them. Now, I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you're definitely going to be doing me a favour in my quest to help as many people as possible to become financially literate. And by the way, I've got a special bonus for you. As my way of saying thank you for subscribing, just go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where I've got a bunch of ebooks and reports. It's just my way of saying thank you for taking the time to listen. And remember, the information that we give you in this podcast is general information, not specific information about your personal circumstances, because we don't know about them. But if you do want specific information, you can always have a chat with my team at Metropole. Go to metropole.com.au. If you really want to learn more, you can always listen to the previous podcast, the many episodes we've already published. Just go back to the old episodes, which each have lessons about property investment, success, and money. Once again, thanks for listening to today's show.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael, but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?